Jim, it seems like every single day I hear of somebody else being diagnosed with breast cancer.
Right.
And with all the ribbons and the marches and the awareness, I don't understand why it feels like there's such an uptick in diagnosis.
Well, that's because there has been, right? And and it's interesting, with all the research that's been done, certainly on the treatment side, um, breast cancer is not a death sentence like it would have been, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
True, yeah.
However, the prevalence of breast cancer is still increasing. And there's a lot of things that go into that, right? So obviously gender plays an important role. Almost all breast cancers are in females, fairly obviously, but men can get breast cancer actually. Age, as women get older, their risk goes up. We know that genetics play a role, particularly around some gene mutations like the BRCA gene, for example.
Yeah.
Reproductive health, and what I mean by that is, women who start their periods at a really young age, so they've been kind of a longer exposure to estrogen, or women who have never had children, so they never take a break from estrogen, that can cause it. We know that taking a hormone replacement for a long period of time, after you've gone through menopause, taking the hormones for a short period of time, it's okay, but after a few years, it raises your risk for breast cancer. There's also a lot of lifestyle-related risk factors. We know that alcohol consumption raises the risk for breast cancer. We know that obesity raises the risk for breast cancer. And the reason obesity raises the risk is that there's an enzyme. So I used to think of fat as something, a way to store energy, right? But fat is a highly metabolically active tissue, and there's an enzyme called aromatase that takes the natural testosterone that all women make and turns it into estrogen. Right? And it's this overexposure to estrogen, which is one of the main drivers of the risk for breast cancer. So women who are obese have even more estrogen because they're taking some of their natural testosterone and turn it into estrogen. Right?
Wow.
We know that a sedentary lifestyle, and we also know diet plays a huge role.
Well, okay, so diet. What kind of foods, or are there foods, I should ask, that would increase the risk for breast cancer?
There are, and the big ones are, meat, red meat, processed meat. Some of that comes because of the saturated fat.
Okay, so not surprising, by the way.
That's in those foods. We know that, again, alcohol can play a role. Sugar, too much highly refined sugar, that stimulates insulin, and insulin can stimulate cancer cells to grow. And we also know that a low fiber diet plays a role, and it probably has to do with the complex interaction between our gut microbiome and cancer risk.
Again, with the gut microbiome.
Right, exactly.
We're learning so much about that. Okay, so we know what could potentially cause breast cancer.
Right.
What hopefully will keep us away from it.
Right. There's a long list of foods that have been associated with lowering your risk for breast cancer. For example, apples. There's polyphenols in apples. Those are anti-inflammatory compounds. And in fact, one study suggested that women who ate more than 2 apples a day had a 20% lower risk for breast cancer than women who didn't eat any apples at all. So
Okay.
apple a day keeps the doctor away,
Yes.
right? Citrus fruits like oranges, there's some compounds called flavonoids, which again, highly anti-inflammatory, help protect you from cancer. Same thing with berries, especially the dark colored berries. Again, those polyphenols and flavonoids, very potent anti-cancer. We know that soy, in fact, we have a whole show on soy,
Yeah.
a previous Doc and Chef episode. The phytoestrogens in soy, which are the plant-based estrogen, phyto means plant, actually block the effect of estrogen and can lower the risk, and lower the risk for recurrence too for women who have already had breast cancer. Mushrooms, very potent inhibitor of cancer cells. Some of the compounds in mushrooms are immune modulators, so they help tune up our immune system so we can detect cancer cells before they have time to kind of set root, if you will.
Cool.
Tomatoes have a compound called lycopene. Lycopene has been associated with a lower risk for prostate cancer in men, breast cancer in women. When you cook, interestingly enough, if you cook tomatoes, the lycopene content goes up. So that's important. Many spices like turmeric, one of the active ingredients in turmeric is a compound called curcumin, and curcumin is a very potent anti-cancer compound. When you're cooking with turmeric, by the way, it's important to add a few grinds of black pepper because black pepper increases the absorption of the curcumin significantly. And then we have some of the true powerhouse anti-cancer foods, and that's true cruciferous vegetables, and particularly broccoli. So broccoli has a compound called glucoraphanin, which in the presence of an enzyme called myrosinase creates another compound called sulforaphane, which is highly, highly anti-cancer, right? And so to activate that enzymatic process, if you will, I think we've talked before about the hack and hold method for onions. Same kind of thing with broccoli. If you chop the broccoli, that damages the cell walls. It activates this kind of enzyme process, and you need to let it sit for about 40-45 minutes, somewhere in there, to fully develop those anti-cancer.
Yeah.
Even more amazing than this, though.
Yeah.
Broccoli sprouts, right? So when you sprout broccoli, the concentration of that glucoraphanin goes up 100%, 100-fold, right? So there's 100 times more glucoraphanin, which is the precursor for the sulforaphane, right? So using broccoli sprouts, is an amazing way to really, really, really maximize the cancer-fighting properties of broccoli.
I am not a big fan of the word superfood just because there are so many superfoods.
I think it is overused, but...
Yeah, but I'll tell you, broccoli sprouts, I think, wins.
Yeah.
So, tell you what, looking at all this, I have a recipe that will hopefully prevent, initially, breast cancer or any kind of recurrence.
Right.
All right, let's get cooking. Here is a great way to incorporate that superfood, the broccoli sprouts, into a really tasty pesto.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're going to start off with the broccoli sprouts, add a little bit of walnuts, some nutritional yeast for that cheesy, nutty flavor. Of course, we're going to use pine nuts because it is a pesto, and of course, we're going to use basil because it's a pesto.
Right.
We're going to add a little bit of garlic and finish it off with lemon.
All right.
Ready?
Ready.
Okay. Okay, to a food processor, we're going to rock and roll. Grab all that beautiful basil. And you could cut the basil a little bit with some spinach or some dark leafy greens if you choose to do that as well. Here is our sprouts. Some walnuts. That's going to give a really nice texture, and it's also going to add just a little bit of fat, as will our pine nuts. Now, truth be told, I do cut the pine nuts with the walnuts because pine nuts are so expensive. So you don't have to buy a whole lot of pine nuts. There is our nutritional yeast. A little bit of garlic. This is 4 cloves. You can add as much or as little as you want. You can also do garlic powder if you choose to do that. Now we're going to give it some pulses and maybe add a little bit of water if it needs it. This looks a little dry, so I am going to drizzle in. Be very conservative when you are adding water or any kind of liquid because you can certainly always add more, but if it's too runny, it's hard to really get that texture you want. Now at this point, I'm going to add a little bit of salt. This is optional, but I do think that, at least for my palate, it's necessary, but just a teeny tiny little bit. You don't need a whole lot. You have control over that. I'm going to add it's just a little bit too dry. Give it another good pulse, and with every food processor, you always need to scrape down those sides. Now, we're going to add our lemon. This is really going to brighten it up, that citrus in there. Now I'm just going to use the juice of 1/2 lemon in there. I don't think it needs a full one today. Give it another good run.
Wow, that looks amazing.
Doesn't it look great? You can smell that basil in there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now at this point we have our broccoli sprouts in here, And the next part of this is we're going to make a tartine, which is just kind of a fancy word for toast or open face. And we're going to top it with another breast cancer fighter, mushrooms.
Mushrooms, got it.
We'll be right back. Smell that basil. Doesn't it smell so good? All right, so now we're just going to build a very simple tartine using our basil and broccoli sprout pesto.
This looks amazing.
I love tartines. They're so easy. They sound
Right.
so fancy, and they're
Right.
really just
bread.
Stuff
It's
on-
it's
stuff on bread.
Yeah, stuff on bread. That's right. That's right.
And then to top, I've just very easily sauteed up some mushrooms with some garlic and some herbs. You can use herbs of your choice, but if you'd like to follow the recipe, we do have it below. I'm messy today.
That's all right. It's kind of like, a clean, you don't want to be too, it means you haven't done anything. If
Right,
it's not
right,
a
right.
little
If
mess.
there's
every
nothing
now
to
and then.
clean up,
Right.
nothing
You
happened.
haven't done anything.
All right, you take a bite.
All right.
I mean, I've made this before, and I love this one. Okay, all right. I know.
Well
I
done.
know. That's really, really good. All right, so if you'd like to join us in embarking on a really awesome plant-based journey, we have a great community that cares, right? Our members, I love our membership. And just for $1 a day, you can join our membership. You get all the classes, the videos, the recipes, interactive live cooking classes, monthly group calls, even some time with the doc quarterly.
Yeah.
So I got to say that nobody is alone when you're a part of this membership. We have a wonderful, wonderful group of people. So just go to thedocandchef.com, and we will see you really soon. Until then, cheers. Yum.